Hello, my name is Cody Robin. I'm one of the Shihans in Kyusho International. I'm looking forward to the upcoming November International Kyusho Convention. I've been fortunate to have been in Kyusho since the beginning, having attended the initial Kyusho Convention almost 20 years ago. And last year, just going to the latest one in Cincinnati was a great chance to meet new friends from Europe, friends from all over the world, and certainly all over the United States. As we prepare our strategies for teaching, we're going to look at things and how we can better the martial arts world and how Kyusho can be added into other things that we already know. My background, and I've had over 30 years of experience in martial arts, from Shotokan to Kempo, Tai Chi. We've done a lot with Filipino martial arts. I've decided to take one aspect of our curriculum, which has to do with defending against a knife, and show how some of those things can be incorporated into the world of Kyusho. So when we have people attacking us with a knife, we have different ranges, and if you've seen some of Evan Pantazi's videos with long-range attacks, the goal is to shoot in and get super close to the person. And anything that's a wide type of angle allows you to do that. So anytime the person is much tighter to you, that's going to limit your chances to get in. So this is what we're going to demonstrate here. So with my uke attacking, I'm going to base everything off of a close angle one type attack. Now I say angle one, every system has their own angle cuts. We're just going to define that as like a forehand strike to the neck. Now when I say close, this is the range we're going to be in. So when he's in close to me, I don't have the ability just to shoot in. Now if the knife was drawn and he hadn't done anything, I may go in directly for the head. But what we're going to do is go over some of the methods that we'll take if the person does cut from this angle and I have to defend. Obviously, if I shoot right in as he's going to cut in, I'm going to get stabbed or sliced, which I need to avoid. So first thing I'm going to do is base it off of how I would deal knife to knife. So if we were in this close position and he went to cut, as I move this away or as I parry this, what my training teaches is to be able to make that cross cut at the same time. So we go into the forearm. So when that happens and I make that cross cut into the forearm, I've already diminished that arm, and then I would be able to come back up to the neck with the knife. I could go to the body, I could follow up to the arm, anything that would be parrying, cutting, and then following up with a strike. So again to the neck. So I make the cut, and then I would be able to go back and make the cuts from here. Problem is that this is lethal, and it also requires that I have a knife on me at all times. So to make that Kyusho based, we want to talk more about nerves and see how we can do things to dysfunction the body. So when he makes that same cut, I can still make that same parry. If I'm going to work off of that parry, then as I go through, this cut would have to have a function. Well, on the inside of the arm, I'll show you on my arm from here, and then we'll switch arms. There's an area where the the ulnar nerve is running down from the underside of the arm to the little finger. When you clip into the bone, into here, the ulnar bone, you're hitting that nerve, and what's going to happen is it's going to activate the hand, often causing the hand to open up. So as he makes that attack, my opposite hand, I'm going to take a knuckle and try to clip right into the inside of that nerve. If you can show it from the left hand. So from there, I'm making that parry as I make that cut across. So as it comes in, I would want to clip that and then use that to enter in. The knife is going to loosen. Even if it doesn't, it's going to activate something to the hand, and then I'm going to go in to try to shut down the head. We'll get into the head points at a later time. So back to the right hand again. What I would do with the knife, as I make that parry, I'm going to also be able to do without the knife. So I'm striking and clipping into the bottom part of the forearm, following up and striking to the neck. As soon as I get in here, just like Master Pantazi's videos, I am going to close as tight as possible, and that's when I'm going to be focusing on head targets. My body is in so close that when he goes to pull back, he's jammed into here, and if I need to prevent, I still have a free hand while this hand is striking. Ideally, I want to have both hands accessible, but I do not want to create any space for him to cut and bring his arm through. So that involves parry. So there's a few other things that we do to defend against the knife. Well, if my arm, well, let's do it without the hand. If he goes for that same cut and my hand was down, Sometimes I'm going to automatically just catch it on the inside. So these defensive positions need to be used to create better movements, because we really can't stop ourselves from flinching. We can train ourselves to be able to take that flinch response and make it more effective. So when he makes that cut and I cover, this arm can parry over, and I can do something called a cross-check parry, where I'm coming across from here. Now, when I get to this point, the knife is going to continue to go. So although I've stopped him from cutting my neck here, and I've moved it across, that knife is going to follow right up. So it's important that I know a couple areas on the arm. One, for destructive purposes, is inside the forearm. So across this radial nerve into the forearm, from there I can strike. So as I make that cross strike, that's going to bring him forward and drop his head, allowing me to get to the neck. Alternatively, if I couldn't get to that, or if his arm was pulled back a little bit, right behind the elbow here is the Golgi tendon, and when I strike into that, it's at the tendon that's connecting the back of the tricep muscle. That's going to push his hand away and allow me to close in also. So if I see a little bit more forearm, I can strike the forearm and enter that way. If I see a little bit more of the elbow, I'm going to strike across and come through here. That I did with the palm, but if you needed to, you could also clip with the knuckles. As long as you don't hit the bone, because his elbow is probably going to hurt my fingers, I'm going to clip the back here and use that as a chance to enter. So again, this is a cross-check parry where my arm is coming up and through, giving me a couple different targets that I can follow up with. If I had my hands up already, maybe I felt the fear, or maybe just naturally threw my hands up, or my hands were already up anyway, and he made that same cut, I can do the same cross-check parry in a downward way. If I take this hand and I parry it through, and my hand is softer and more flexible, then that's going to pass through, and then I can enter in using that arm point and using the head. If I'm a little bit more aware of it, my downward strike itself, this cross-checking parry can be targeting the arm. So that same forearm point on the inside, or anything across the inside part of his forearm, I'm going to strike. So if my hands were here and he made the cut, that downward strike is going to push forward. Notice how his shoulder dropped, straightened out, and when that happened, his head stayed where it was for a moment, but his neck elongated, which is what my next target's going to be. So hit down, there's my follow-up strike into his neck. So that's a downward cross-check parry. This is also going to work against backhand cuts. It's going to work against thrusts. For right now, for one more, we're going to talk about that straight linear thrust. With the knife, depends on what I can do from here. If he goes to cut, I need to stop that, and maybe I'm going to do a direct cut to his body or to his neck, or maybe I'm going to try to get rid of the arm, cause something to happen to his arm. It's much harder, though, if he's in really tight and plugging away. So if I'm trying to stop this and he's jamming in here, I'm not going to have much of a chance of parrying this. He's going to have a lot more power, especially if he's holding in. He could be locked up to me from here, and he's pounding away from there. So I have defensive positioning, but that's only going to last you so long. So by going to the wrist, by going to the forearm, this is going to slowly get rid of some of the power behind his strike. I also have his shoulder, depending on where it positions. So I'm going to work on this downward position to try to bring that hand down. So for the purposes of practice, I do it with my hands. But for the purposes of defense, I'm going to use my knuckles. Knuckles go across the radius up in the bottom of the wrist. Inside of the radius is going to be more susceptible. Outside still pretty strong. And then inside this little pocket in here on the wrist is really powerful too. Otherwise into the forearm. So when he comes in with that strike, that's going to allow me to lower his arm and then follow up and be able to get directly into the head. Okay, that's just a small example of some of the things that we're going to be doing in November. So I'm looking forward to seeing everybody. We're going to practice how knife defense and offensive techniques can be used in Kyusho to better defend against somebody with a knife. See you everybody in November. Thank you very much.